A leaked and unverified medical report claims that Imane Khelif is a biological man after all, reigniting the gender debate at the Olympics and the calls for Khelif to return those medals. It must be stressed that the International Olympic Committee emphasised that the origin of these reports is unknown and unverified, and the co-author of the report feels that his name is being used wrongly to spread false information. But what I find really interesting about all of this is the reporting on it. So that'll form part of the reason for this video, plus what I think ought to happen at the Olympics. But this is just my opinion, of course, and reporting on what's being said here. But if this does turn out to be true, then everybody that was frustrated and perhaps angry about the situation may feel justified in the end. But we'll have to wait and see. What I also find interesting is that there are reports that Imane Khelif is considering legal action against those who leaked the reports, much like the legal threats against commentators at the original story back in August, I believe it was. But as I said, what I find really interesting about this is the reporting, because only one or two news outlets are actually reporting on the contents of this leaked report. But if we move to the BBC by way of example, the BBC story on this only really says that Khelif is preparing legal action after these new eligibility claims over gender for participation in the Olympics. This story by the BBC doesn't, in fact, make reference to precisely what the report says. And neither will I, quite frankly, just the fact that there is a leaked report making this new claim. The IOC says that Khelif, who is already taking action against individuals who commented on the original situation, which I've mentioned previously, I think is going nowhere. The BBC does, however, reference back to what the IBA said previously, which was that Khelif failed to meet the eligibility criteria for participating in the women's competition. The IBA said that it defines a woman, a female or girl, as an individual with chromosomes XX, and men, males or boys, as an individual with chromosome XY. And ironically, the IOC questioned the legitimacy and credibility of the IBA's tests, saying that they could not be relied upon. However, I say ironically because if we move to what the IOC say for participation in their competitions and gender eligibility, they said every person has the right to practice sport without discrimination. Fair enough. But remembering that certain discrimination can be lawful and thus is not unlawful discrimination if it is to achieve a legitimate aim. For example, excluding transgender participants from, let's say, the female category would be lawful if it is fair for the reasons set out in the legislation. But moving on, the IOC says that all athletes participating in the boxing tournament of the Olympic Games, Paris 24, comply with the competition's eligibility and entry regulations as well as the applicable medical regulations set by the Paris Boxing Unit. But then, and here's the real key, it says, as with previous Olympic boxing competitions, the gender and age of the athletes are based on their passport. So that then excludes any possibility of an incorrect registration on the passport of the participant's gender being corrected by any method of testing by the IOC, if the IOC relies on what it says in the passport. So as per my previous discussion on this subject, if there were any disorders as to sexual development that led to the wrong gender being recorded on the passport, the IOC, presumably, according to their statement, would just overlook that because they'll take the gender directly from the passport, thus precluding any possibility of correction. Now, if that were the case for Imane Khelif, and if it is supported by new leaked documents, then surely that calls for a rethink with how the IOC deals with these situations and potentially a recall of those medals. Now, on the one hand, Khelif is said to be thinking about suing those that leaked the medical report. On the other hand, if that is the case and there is a lawsuit filed, that will probably tell everybody everything they need to know. Because either it's a genuine medical report and the contents are accurate and thus it will become public domain because that's what happens with documents when they're filed at court, or it will be a case of false information and that the report is not genuine. But then either way, the report will make its way into court documents and there'll be a court case as to whether or not that document was in fact true and valid. Now, the big question mark here is the doctor that is disassociating themselves from it. Now, all of this sort of stuff would come out in a lawsuit as well. Now, as will typically happen with these things, when anybody sues over a particular document, the document will become the subject matter for the court to adjudicate. And of course, then the provenance, the accuracy and verification of those documents will all become part of the case. And either way, there's a very strong argument that this is all in the public interest, because if that is a genuine document and it does say anything along those lines, then it would be in the public interest, because it would mean that ultimately the IOC has got this wrong and it has led to a situation which is untenable and potentially unsafe for a lot of participants. On the other hand, if it is a completely fictitious document, it means nothing, then obviously that will be revealed in the court case. So either way, we'll just have to wait and see. But either way, again, there is a very strong public interest element to this case, and that is not just what the public are interested in, but it is of subject matter that is of interest to the public at large. So I hope you found that interesting in so much as who is reporting and what they are not reporting, and just emphasizing the fact that these are as yet unverified. But if there is a lawsuit, maybe that will clarify things after all. And so with that, please do remember to like the video and subscribe and hit the notification bell. That helps my channel grow. And as always, thank you for watching.